views. But the one view that I really wanted to spend some time on is this ARVID Account Plus view. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with that one right now, but it is probably one of the best views to use for looking at both Wally-Coleus research data and CANFES data, because for the 5.3 accounts, we kind of combine that information all into one view for you. So even though that view has, you know, every account in KFS, if you just limit it to the 5.3 accounts, then you'll get the research information. One thing to be aware of is Pueblo is also using 5.3 accounts. So you want to make sure that you are only looking at the CSU accounts and you're pulling information from there, because otherwise you're going to get Pueblo accounts in there. It's going to be kind of confusing.
Don't they have a code?
They do. It's that chart of accounts code, so you want to restrict that to CO for just the CSU accounts. I'm not sure what, I think Pueblo is PB.
PB,
Yeah, PB. So, and one of the things that we've kind of done recently with that view is added more of the sponsor information in there. So if you're looking for direct sponsor information as well as the prime, the flow-through sponsor information, it's all in that view. So it's a really handy place to get kind of all of that information in one place. So that's the first one that I would recommend looking at.
For a state of confusion, I think some people can see the account plus 53 still out there. We kind of did that as an interim introductory thing, and we're really trying to move away from that, but we haven't really killed it. So we do see two account pluses. The one with the 53 really shouldn't be used, and I mean, this is our long-term one, account plus.
That's a good point, yeah. Yeah, so definitely look for the one that doesn't have the 53 on the end of it. And then, so these other views that we have out there, these are all in the CSU SR schema, so that's kind of the group of views that our office has control over and kind of owns. And most of these are prefixed with RPS. And the reason being is because if you're familiar with the RPS web application, that is actually built on top of these views. So the data that you see in these RPS views is what you're going to see when you go into that web application. So it should match. We're built just directly off of these views. So the first one is RPS demographics, and I always think of that one as kind of the base view because that's really one record per account. One thing that's a little bit confusing with that view is it contains all of the currently open accounts and then everything closed since October of 2014. So if you're looking for older accounts, they may not be in that view, and that's because when we migrated from our old legacy research management system to Wally-Coleus, we didn't bring forward every account. We only brought forward accounts that were active at that point in time. So you're not going to have all of that history in RPS demographics. You should have history in the Account Plus view because that goes back a lot further than the RPS demographics. So sometimes people get a little bit confused as to why they're not seeing some of those older closed accounts in the demographics view. And that's why. And we don't have any plans to migrate all of those old accounts to Wally-Coleus at this point. So I don't know that they're ever going to show up in that particular view.
Diane, what can you see in demographics that you can't see in Account Plus?
There's a little bit more information in there. I have actually a website, and it's at the bottom of this first page that has all of the data dictionary, the field definitions. So let's see if we can, I'll try to open that. RPS demographics, it has some of that information, like the, equipment $5,000 threshold, yes, no. Trying to think, FDP, yes, no, some general comments. You might wanna take a look at these field definitions and just look and see what some of that additional information that you might be interested in.
Kathy, is this any different than our data dictionary comments and descriptions? Okay,
No, she gave us the exact same.
okay. So we're at least in sync, okay.
Yeah, the definitions here should match what you have on your ODS.
So your handout link is the same as our dictionary link then?
Well, this is actually a page that I maintain, but the definitions are the same. I
Okay.
try to use those consistently throughout. And then some of these other RPS views, so if you're looking at demographics, I mentioned that's one record per account. If you look at these other RPS views, there's a one-to-many relationship. So if you're looking at contacts, you're gonna see multiple records per account, because in contacts, you're gonna see the primary PI, the co-PI, the fiscal officer, the sponsored program, senior research administrator. It's all of those people who are associated with that account. So you're always gonna have that one-to-many relationship. And on these, like page 2, 3, 4 of this handout, I'm giving you some examples of what's in each of these views, so you can have a quick reference to see if it's information that you might be interested in. Comments, that's another one where you might have multiple types of comments for each 5-3 account, things like invoice instructions, general comments, fiscal report comments. All of this information is pulling from CODIS. So this is everything that the sponsored program staff has entered for that account in that system.
Diane, would you mind showing that on the screen there, so for the folks that might be doing the video, they can follow along? Thank you.
Let's see. The RPS cost share account and cost share amount views just have the cost share account numbers and then the actual cost share commitment amounts. So again, that's a one-to-many relationship. One thing I want to mention about the RPS funding proposal view, this one gets a little bit confusing because people think that this is PASS, that this is like all of the records in PASS, and it's not. It's only those proposals that are actually linked to a 5-3 account.
It's only the funded ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're not gonna see a history of all the proposals that have ever been submitted here. It's just those that are actually associated with a 5-3 account. Just last week, we actually found a bug in the Qualitoya system that is affecting this view. So we're noticing that some proposals aren't flowing through here, and I'll have to work with Kathy on taking a look at this view, and we may need to do some tweaks to get the information we need.
Cost share.
Funding proposals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because we are working on fixing Casey, where's that one, the reporting document.
Yeah, that one's not, we don't have that one, that's not a public view.
Okay.
But yeah, so just kind of be aware if you're looking at funding proposal right now that, you may not be getting everything in that view.
So let me ask, okay, so we have an effective project, we do additional funding, you know, your new money that comes in. How are you tying that back to an existing 5-3? Are you putting, I mean, because before it was through a key number when you did the start or whatever, but how do you tie it back now?
Well, the system has the ability to enter multiple proposals, for a 5-3 account, so it's whatever sponsor programs is entering,
Okay.
into the system. So if they submitted another proposal and it's related to that 5-3 account, and they add that information in the system, then you'll see that in this view.
But it's only a matter of if they're actually gonna enter
Right.
the information in there.
Yeah, so it's whatever they're entering into that system is what you're gonna
Okay.
see here.
So does that also populate what's on path, like the report, ad hoc reports on the data center, where it says funded? Does it populate that as
It
well?
looks at that information.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks to see if there's a proposal tied to a 5-3 account, and if there is, then it says, it flags that as a funded record.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when KC is online, when proposal's online,
Mhm.
then it'll start showing all proposals, even those that aren't funded, or you'll have a view, or what's the
So,
plan?
yeah, so proposals, when KC proposal goes online, I would anticipate that we'll have views of that information as well, and ODS of the proposals. I don't know how much history we're gonna migrate into KC proposals, so I don't know how much history's gonna be there, but
But at least going forward.
yeah. Yeah, and we haven't really talked about what views we're gonna need for that.
Can I ask another question? So I'm just kind of curious, since I go to multiple places to get research data, and then I go to you after I can't figure out this. So there's Research Data Center.
Mhm.
Where does that pull from?
So that pulls actually from multiple places.
Okay. Can you tell us what those places are?
So it pulls from Quality ODS, it pulls from PASS, the current proposal system, and then it pulls from our historical database, which is like a history of proposals and awards, which we don't have publicly available on ODS right now. So it's kind of just, yeah, it's pulling from all over the place right now.
So the system that Amy just asked about, that's not in ODS, it's another system, an alternate system, like,
Yeah, it's just a web. We have some, like web searches, web reports out there that are not pulling everything from ODS. I mean, it's still pulling some legacy information and, yeah, combining.
so we can't really marry reports, from these alternate sources with ODS at this point,
Not
right?
at this point.
Okay.
No, and I know, Doug has been talking with our, vice president about kind of the direction of the data center and what types of information we want out there and reporting, and we're looking at all of this.
But I've still done things where I've run a report in Research Data Center where I've said, okay, show me all, all submitted proposals for this college, and it comes up with massive spreadsheet. I put that in Access and link it to the Research Data, or the ODS, and then I can do what I need. So, I mean, there's workarounds still.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, if you're looking at for a history of proposals, and award dollars, that's really the only place you can get it right now.
And I think the direction that Krista's leaning in is to have that data provided statically, so you could go and get that data, so we have this sort of one version of the truth. So you'll have proposals broken down by college and department and PI, so that everybody pulls from the same
Yeah. the
same
one
well
thing
in terms of that data.
That's amazing with that data is the COI fields. Forever, because you can't actually search in Research Data Center on the COI.
Right.
But once I'm in Access, now I can digest that and go find them and pull everything that a PI is, or faculty members, both PI and COI.
Right, so how they're associated.
Yeah,
completely.
and that's been interesting and useful in some of the vet med reporting, so.
Do we offer, COI or COI data in ODS or not?
We do for, active projects.
Okay.
Recently closed, projects closed since October 2014. We don't have history, proposal history and
Okay.
award history.
So we got data all over the place.
We do have-
And I think that's Krista's concern, is that we have data all over the place, and
Yeah.
people are pulling stuff from different places and coming to different conclusions, and what we would like to do is standardize a lot of that data, and I was supposed to make a presentation to the crowd yesterday, but I got bumped for time, so I'll be on there next week, trying to figure out what kinds of data is gonna be useful in terms of an annual report, a quarterly report of, just those really basic kinds of data, how many proposals, how many awards, expenditure data, that kind of stuff, which sort of exists in a lot of different places. I'm trying to coalesce that, put it into one place, and then figure out what the portal is for that, so that, you know, if somebody needs that information, you can just go grab it. It's an Excel spreadsheet or it's an Access table or something, and it's always the same. So if you pull it in March, it's the same as August, and if you pull it, it's the same. That kind of thing. So, holy grail.
Yeah.
What's your guys' timeline on that?
ASAP now. I mean, it's sort of my priorities get shifted every week or so.
But
But
trying for 2016.
right, trying as soon as possible. My new priority now is this data stuff. So.
Yeah, so I'm not making any changes to the data center right now. You know, every now and then people want to see this or that added, but it's kind of, we're not doing any changes because we're kind of headed in a different direction. So, so it's kind of, it is what it is right now.
So Doug, are you looking at putting that data in the ODS or some other place?
I'm not sure yet, honestly.
Seems like the ODS would be the place to put it.
That's the best place, yeah.
And then it could be combined with other things in one spreadsheet or.
And this is award data that we're talking about, right?
Proposal
Well,
data,
proposal
award
award.
data, probably
Mm-hmm.
expenditure data.
Okay.
You know, those are sort of the big questions, and we want to make sure that people aren't confusing things either. I think we had some issues before where somebody pulled expenditure data or pulled award data, treated it like expenditure data or vice versa, and that caused a lot of angst and loss of hair, and I can't afford to lose any more hair. So. We want to make sure that we're providing the data that people need to make the decisions they need to make, and it's consistent.
So will any of this feed over into DGM?
I don't know.
DGM.
Oh,
Digital measures.
FSAT.
FSAS. I mean, I think from the perspective of the research data that we're trying to feed to FSAS, we want to be consistent there, and so that would, again, be the same source for FSAS as it is for.
But you're taking
other
their
reports.
needs into consideration in
Yeah.
this data too.
So, some of the other views like keywords, we pull information. A lot of that information actually flows from PASS into Quali-CODIUS when the project is funded. And then it flows into this view. So if you're looking for specific keywords for an account, that information is out there. Related numbers, any type of additional related 5-3 account numbers, 88 account, looks like we're recording FANE numbers here. I'm not real familiar with what that
The
is. but-
FANE in the government's infinite wisdom is supposed to be the number by which you identify things in their data reporting center. So if you go to usaspending.com, the FANE is what you use. When you do subrecipient reporting, the FANE is supposed to be what you use. I think it's really just that they take the contract number or their grant number and collapse it, take all the dashes out of it and stuff, so you remove some of that error. But that's the FANE, another number that they added that you have to find.
Now, does that equate to something we're looking at here, Doug, or?
The number, it's out there. I don't know how valuable that is really to anybody.
That FANE number right there looks like an NSF grant number. So yeah, that's,
Are you talking about this number?
yeah, that 13 number there. That looks like the root of an NSF project number, doesn't it? An award number.
I never
I
compared.
haven't,
It's not
I haven't, since I haven't had to do the subrecipient reporting for a while, thank God.
And actually, in one of the newer releases of Quali-CODIUS, I think that they have actually added a unique field to the system for that number. So, we may start using that eventually.
It will make the subrecipient reporting much easier to do later. You don't have to try and figure out what the FANE is.
So this other view here, RPS reports, is useful if you're looking for when different reports are due. So we actually do some calculating here. We don't do any calculation if there's like a monthly report that's due because that date varies. So we're just doing a calculation on some of these where like final department transactions are due 60 days after the project end date. And then we'll calculate a date here for you. So that can be a helpful view if you're looking for reporting dates. And special review has to do with RICRO, any sort of human subjects, animal usage. If you're looking to see protocol information pending, approved for 5.3 accounts, that's out there. And RPS terms, I don't consider this a really helpful view because most of the time you're gonna see project file. It's just because sponsor programs doesn't have the resources to really maintain a lot of information here. So that's probably on the majority of records is what you're gonna see here. And then CSU award budget is basically history of budget transactions. So every time dollars are added or deobligated, you'll see each of those transactions and the date of the transaction and what happened with that account. So that can be really handy too.
Yeah, I have a question about the human subjects. So KFS has the ability to do workflow approval for lab animals. Do we have lab humans that we do human subjects?
Lab humans?
Just a joke, Diane.
It's in the corner of the business.
Yeah, they're all in
When a
exercise
zombie
science.
apocalypse, it's gonna get a zombie apocalypse.
We don't have the checkers.
So getting into some of these, so those are really the main RPS views that we have out there. We have a few of these other views. Sponsor Plus is really just a table full of sponsor names. So these are all the sponsors that we've submitted proposals to or received awards from. So it's one record per sponsor, and we tell you what type of sponsor, if it's federal, commercial, foundation. Sometimes they have an acronym that we enter. And then we also group these sponsors, so it's just a handy way to look at all the different sponsors that we've done business with. You can link that to some of the other views if you need to. And then the crosswalk is a way that you can look to see what the old code was in our legacy system, Vision, which is called Vision, what that old code was and what the new Quali-Coia sponsor code is. Because in KFS, I think some of the old, even FRS views that are out there, they still have those old legacy codes, and sometimes you want to know who that sponsor is. So you can use the crosswalk table to find that information. And we just recently migrated all of our sponsors, all of our old sponsors into Quali-Coias. So the crosswalk table should have like everything in there now.
And we had an issue with IR, we're still using the old sponsor codes, and weren't we encouraging them to use the KC sponsor codes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're trying to encourage people to get used to using the new KC codes and names and trying to phase out those old Vision
And we
codes.
did get rid of it, and that's what caused them the problem, because we got rid of the old things.
Yeah.
You know, stuff.
Yeah, so there's still a few people doing reports that maybe they only do once a year, and they're finding out that some of this information isn't out there anymore, so hopefully we can point them to the new current information.
But Diane, we, as far as vision goes, I mean, we don't even have a time frame when we're talking about getting rid of that or replacing it, do we?
Yeah, we don't have any end date of Vision at this point. I mean, it's our local database, and I foresee that we're always gonna have a need for that in some fashion. So I don't see that going away in the next few years. I think we're gonna continue to maintain some information in there. And I kind of talked about Account Plus. And then at the, so at the back of the handout, I kind of go into into a little bit more detail about some of these sponsor codes. In Arvid Account Plus, there's actually 2 fields that we left in the view because we didn't want to break anybody's queries. But they're basically not being used, so they will either be null or have like all zeros in there. It's that sponsor CD and sponsor MM codes. Those are no longer being used. And the codes and fields that are currently being used, I've kind of outlined here. So these are different ways that you can pull and group sponsors, depending on what type of information you're wanting to show in your report. And I've printed some examples of what this might look like on different accounts that have flow through and don't have flow through, and what some of these, like the fund source and the research report code would look like. And then the last couple pages, I've just given you those values. So you can decide, you know, really what you want to report on. You can slice it and dice it in different ways.
So help me out with the sponsor code there. I thought we showed in the crosswalk that we had new values for KC sponsor codes, but then in Account Plus, you kind of said we're not using the sponsor code field. So
Well, we're using the sponsor codes, it's just they're called something different now in Account Plus. So,
They're right there.
yeah. So rather than sponsor underscore CD, it's just called sponsor.
okay.
So
we've renamed them. So it's
we've
sponsor,
Yeah, we've renamed them.
sponsor and sponsor name then.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that's really kind of just a summary of what we have out there kind of publicly available. If you don't have access, you can go through the ODS website and request access to these views. I think it just goes through the normal routing and approval process.
Yeah, it's automated, so if you just go out there, it'll go to your supervisor first and then on to the data steward. So, everything that Diane talked about is just an automatic.
And like currently, we're not creating really any new views right now because, like I said, we're kind of on hold to see what direction we want to head with the data that's available and what we put out there. So this is what we have out there right now. Nothing new planned on the near horizon.
So KC and KFS are being upgraded next month in April. We don't envision then adding new data to ODS from that upgrade.
Well, Kathy and I have worked on kind of going through all the changes that are being made to the database structures, and I think there were a couple new fields, but they're not, like the FAME number, but they're not ones that we're currently bringing
We
in.
brought in the new fields, but we're not using them. I did not, the fields that are being deleted, I left in there so it doesn't break anybody's reports, but they'll be null, so.
But, and I don't, those shouldn't affect any of really.
We weren't using them anyway.
Yeah, we weren't using them anyway.
Once they're
so.
removing, nobody's using, we aren't using them, we aren't populating them, so.
Yeah, so the upgrade to the systems, I don't see affecting these views at all.
Okay.
For the fields that are no longer being used, are they still in the data dictionary?
They probably will.
So
So I'll have
can
to
you
change the
put them in as, will show as null, because when I'm writing more complicated reports like just today,
I actually
I've
think-
realized that I'm gonna have to go back and edit a good portion of an SOP that I've written that's, basically 16 pages long to
Honestly, I
change
think
the
the
things.
fields that are not being deleted are not in any of the reports. They may be in the table, but they're not in any of her reports. So she's not using these columns in any of her reports. So
Yes, but I can go into ODS and I can think, oh, I should pull this.
They
You
won't
don't,
even
because
be
you're,
there.
the definitions are only on the views, not on the tables.
Okay.
So we have some stuff underneath the covers that we're cleaning up as a result of the upgrade, but it's not going to impact any of the RPS reporting views that you guys have access to.
Anything that's happened is not being added to the views or taken away from the views. It's just happening on the base table information, not on the view creations.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
But that is a good point. A lot of times we will leave we'll leave the fields there because people could have either extract processes that reference those fields, or they have batch reports that are scheduled, and we don't want to break those processes, so sometimes we'll leave them there. But in this case, it's really not even going to impact any kind of reporting for.
There might be more data, like they're adding more data, they're adding indexes, they're adding, stuff like that. You might see more stuff come in as far as the result.
Yeah,
of what
most of
is
it's on
coming.
stuff that I've built prior to, in the past. And if I went to run it now, it'd just sometimes be nice to know kind of what the thinking is out there, or if things have changed, or
Yeah.
what you're populating now.
Yeah, like she said, the FANG number, I brought it into like what we need to do is a table change, and I want the table to match. But she isn't reporting on
not
it anyway,
pulling
so
in,
it's not,
yeah.
it only went as far as, adding it, so I matched exactly to Casey on the ODS, but.
Yeah, because we don't even know how Sponsor Programs is gonna be using that, or if they're gonna be using it, or.
As far as reporting, probably not using it. It's something that's necessary to report to the federal government, but probably from an internal perspective, we'd use the grant number or the 53 number more likely.
Yeah, and if we add any fields or take any fields away, we can communicate with the ODS. like
Yeah, and
the
usually
ODS.
before we add anything or take it away, for ODS, we put it out there at least a good month ahead of time saying, this is coming,
Yeah.
change it, so.
Yeah, I don't know, I must not be on all the communications, but because with Account Plus, I didn't know that was the report to use over Account Plus 5.3. So, John was kind of talking about this before. Sometimes you're driving blind and figuring out which one is gonna be the one that's gonna be maintained.
Mhm.
And without, reaching out and talking to somebody,
Yeah,
you're just playing a guessing
The
game.
Account Plus 5.3 was created last year end to try and help with people because the codes were switching.
Mhm.
And so they created the 53 to kind of help people get to where they need for fiscal year end. But we have totally replaced everything, and we actually just need to get rid of the 53 view out there because it's all in the Account Plus now. And we made all the changes because everything, a lot of the Casey stuff was being pulled from KFS side, and I went through and I pulled all the KC fields from the KC database versus the KFS database, so that was the changes for the long term.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where as a new user, you don't know.
Yeah.
It is a guessing game, and we're trying to improve that. But and James, we never got the forum up there, but the forum we could ask questions. But this is the place